Here we are. We're ready for the next stage, 5th grade through 7th grade. Now, keep one thing in mind as we're going through this. I don't like assigning ages to grade. That was something that was done way back by public school to give them ages and grades. The truth is, children can be anywhere along these lines. And by giving you this big picture, this view of the developmental and the teaching process, you can see, okay, maybe my child is this age, but I see he or she fits more with this lower grade, or perhaps I see some things for this higher grade, and that also helps you to make a better fit when it comes to curriculum. So I really do enjoy explaining each of these stages, and there's always something neat about each one of the stages. There's always something happening that's different, a milestone. So let me share about 5th through 7th grade, what the milestones are here, what the benchmark is, how things changed for me during these years. Okay, first let me tell you about how long it takes for the core subjects. And I'll explain what the core subjects are as well. And remember, if you haven't watched the other stages, if this is, you're only watching this one because your child is here, I'm going to say the same thing that I did in the previous one so you don't forget. And that is, when I give this amount of time I'm given, that is for the core subjects. That doesn't mean that's all the learning you do for the day, because core subjects are subjective. That means we can do as many of them as we want to, as long as we want to. But core subjects are subjects that you really need to learn every day in a sequence, and they're important at the particular ages or stages for the foundation. So 5th through 7th grade, or about 5th or 6th grade, we're looking at about 3.5 hours to get the core subjects or the skill subjects, math and language arts, done. And then 7th grade was a little bit longer. We spent about 4 hours doing this. Okay, and then let me explain again what are the language arts subjects that fall under language arts. So there's 4 of them. And it's always, I think it's important, especially at this age, to keep them separate, because by this time a child may have a particular strength in reading, but their writing skills or composing skills may be lagging behind. That's why I've always separated the subjects to get a better fit for each of my children. Okay, so the 4 subjects that fall under language arts, then reading has now turned to literature. We're no longer teaching them how to read. Oh, yes, they're still practicing and honing their reading, but we're not doing the we're not doing any of that. They're well on their way to reading, and we keep challenging them, give them books with higher vocabulary, so they're still reading to learn. Okay, so reading has turned to literature. That's one of the components. Penmanship has now turned to composition. And the previous stages, we had introduced composition because we overlapped it with getting fine motor control of their fine motor skills, or getting control of their fine motor skills. And now penmanship has turned to composition. But in these stages, now they can write pretty well, and we want to focus on composition, creative writing, and not even just creative writing, just basic how-to writing. And then also, let me explain the other 2, grammar and then spelling. Solid spelling right through these grades, solid grammar right through these grades. Now, there's a reason I didn't put 6th, 7th, and 8th grade together, which is generally referred to as middle school, because 6th grade is still so very young compared to 8th grade. There's such a huge change in there. I feel like in 7th grade, kids are still really entitled to that childhood. And sometimes as parents, because our kids may be advanced, and it does happen when you've homeschooled from the beginning, just because you spend a lot of times with kids, they can be way advanced for their age and maturity. So, but still they're entitled to a childhood, because there's plenty of time to be weighed down with academics in 8th grade, high school, and even if they choose a career track or a college track after that. So this is the time to really enjoy teaching them. And what you've done is you switched also from just making the skill subjects something taught in isolation to making the skill subjects count with a content subject. Let me explain that in just a minute, because I said math and language arts were the basics, but also what changes here between 5th and 7th grade and even up to 8th grade and higher, actually from 5th really on to high school, and that is we switch and focus on what I call the fun things, our content subjects. Up until this time, you have taught them how to read and write well, math, all those things are so foundational and important. And sometimes mistakes new homeschoolers make is they focus so much on the fun subjects, not that we don't want to have fun homeschooling, but the kids didn't get the basic. And then by the time they get to be 5th, 6th, or 7th grade, they can't read and they can't write, and they're embarrassed and they're shy because they may lag behind. And if that's the case, then you do need to return to basics. A lot of books, skill books, aren't by first or 2nd grade. They don't put the grade level on them. And I've had to share this tip with new homeschool moms. Sometimes they'll just say level A, B, C, and D. A child doesn't have to know that level A equates with 1st grade or B with 2nd and such as this. They don't have to know that. Just say, we're going to repeat some of these skills because we need to master them. Okay? So if that happens and you see your child is struggling and they didn't get some of the lower skills or concepts from the lower grades is what I'm trying to say, then go ahead and repeat it here. You need to do that first. But for the most part, these years you want it to be fun. This is where they should focus on what their love is. What are their interests? Are they science-minded? Are they history-minded? Are they hands-on? Do they love nature studies? This is where you feed that passion. And it's really a fun time to school because they're past the basics of you had to sit there and teach them cursive and the letters and how to read. And now they can read independently. They can read to you. They can tell you what they know. It really is a fun time. That's why you want to let go of some of the control here. Ask them what they want to learn about. Now, what I was talking about earlier was you focus first on the content subjects. And what I mean by that is that you'll take a skill. This is how you help even a child, perhaps you've taken him out of school in these grades or middle school, and you've not been with them to set the foundation. Maybe they're going to have some struggles. Maybe you're going to have to work on some foundational things. But the way you get them and you lure them in and you don't burn them out and you have them enjoy and change and have a mind shift of what is fun homeschooling or learning is that you use content subjects. Our content subjects are art, nature studies, science, history, geography, unit studies, hands-on, extracurricular activities that you're adding to your homeschool. Those need to come to the front burner. And this is how you do it. Here's an example. I had one of my sons that didn't like creative writing when I was teaching him creative writing. So I said, okay, my goal was to get him to write first. Yes, it's important to be creative in your writing, but first I wanted him to be solid. Of course, I had another son who was great at writing, and people would think he was great at writing, but he would go on and on and on and on and never got to his point. So I had to work with him on a different skill set to narrow what he's saying to be more concise. But my other son wasn't like that. And so he struggled with it. Okay, so what do we do? Well, you take a topic they're interested in. It may not even be what's in your curriculum. This is where the teacher comes. This is where you as the teacher and hands-on, you're seeing his struggle. You tweak things to fit him. So what I did was I took a subject he was interested in. It happened to be World War II weaponry. Now, it's not something I would certainly dive into, but it's something he was interested in. So now all of a sudden, we have him interested in this book about this subject that makes sense. So now writing has a purpose. It has a purpose. He can see a purpose for it. He's just not writing some useless sentence that comes from a curriculum. This is how you have to deal with this age. It's very different when they're at the tweens and the teens. You have to have a little more finesse and come with a few more things out of your arsenal to pull out for them. Because when they're young and they're compliant and they're learning, it's a little easier. Now they have a little attitude. And it's okay to have attitude. Now, I wouldn't say that I want them to just, oh, go ahead, it's okay to just look past the attitude. No, I wouldn't do that. But sometimes attitude is a sign of having a different mindset or something being hard, okay? We have to decide, are they giving us attitude because the curriculum's hard, or are they giving us attitude because maybe they have a different way of what to do it? See, and so we can't treat them like we did when they were little. We have to listen to them, because what we want them to do is this, normally during this time period is when the shift happens from that teacher hat to supervisor hat. And we want them to take the reins. See, we don't want to spoon feed our kids. That's hard to do in homeschooling. That's why a lot of homeschoolers don't succeed. They sit there and they spoon feed and they give and they give. So it's hard at this stage to know, okay, how do I give them that control, but yet I maintain the authority? Because you want them to realize it's not just all about them. There's expectations. And don't you wish you could do everything you want to do for the day? So what we have to do is start treating them like not many adults, but start modeling how we want them to be as adults. For example, I don't know when you're viewing this, morning, night, but you're viewing it at a time good for you, for your body, for your rhythm, for your day. Our kids are no different, especially when they start getting to this age. If we're a person that's more relaxed homeschooler, do you need to have more of a schedule for kids? Do you need to say, okay, he wants to get up early and he needs an organized place. I'm not that kind of person. It doesn't bother me, but it bothers him. See, we have moms that are so relaxed and they can start anytime and they can start and the house is half messed up. Then we have other kids. I have a son like that. He couldn't start with a lot of noise. He needed his desk. He needed organization. He needed light to start. I had to adjust to him. Then I have another kid who's like, oh, what's the big deal? Let's eat Cheetos and chocolate milk in the morning. He wanted to listen to a little music while he did his and sat on the bed. Perfectly fine with that. That took into consideration his way